Imagine being a parent, fighting to protect your child in a world that doesn't always understand them. Now, picture this. Your disabled daughter waiting for a school bus is kicked off by a stranger. Not because she's done anything wrong, but because someone decided she didn't belong. She's left standing in the cold, alone and confused. But what that woman didn't know, what no one knew, was that this wasn't just any ordinary dad she was messing with. I'm a Navy SEAL, and when you mess with my family, you've just made the biggest mistake of your life. What happened next? Well, it's not just a story of standing up for my daughter. It's a story of resilience, a shocking twist, and the lengths a father will go to for his child. Stay tuned, because this is a journey you won't see coming. Before we dive into today's story, I want to know where you're watching from. Drop the name of your city in the comments below. Let's see how far this video travels. And hey, if you're new to the channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button because you won't want to miss the story I'm about to share. You ever hear a story and think that couldn't possibly happen to someone in real life? Well, this is one of those stories that will make you question everything you thought you knew about standing up for what's right. It started as a normal day. My daughter, who's got special needs, was waiting for the school bus like every other kid in the neighborhood. But that day was anything but normal. What should have been a routine ride to school turned into something that shook me to my core. You see, my daughter, she's sweet, innocent, and full of life. But she also faces challenges that most people don't understand. She's different, and because of that, she's often treated differently. But this time, it was different. A woman, a member of the HOA, decided my daughter didn't deserve a seat on the bus. Without warning, she kicked her off, left her standing on the side of the road alone. You'd think that would be the end of the story, right? But the truth is, this was just the beginning. Because what that woman didn't know, what no one knew, was that I'm not your average dad. I'm a Navy SEAL, and when it comes to my family, I'm willing to do whatever it takes. What happened next is a tale of resilience, justice, and the lengths a father will go to protect his own. It was just like any other morning. The sun was barely up, casting a soft orange glow across the neighborhood. My daughter, Emma, stood by the window, pressing her face against the glass, her small hands tracing the cold edges as she eagerly awaited the school bus. She had always loved the bus ride, excited to see her friends, to feel like part of something. But that morning would change everything. Emma, like many children, has special needs. She has autism, which often makes her behavior unpredictable, especially when she's excited or anxious. It's not always easy for her to fit into the neat little boxes that society expects. She doesn't always understand social cues, and sometimes her speech can be difficult for others to understand. She struggles with things that most kids her age take for granted, but there's something about her that's beautiful, something pure and innocent that the world could learn a lot from. Despite her differences, Emma has always been an incredibly bright child. Her heart is filled with kindness, and she has a smile that could light up the darkest room. As her father, I've always done everything I can to make her feel accepted, loved, and safe. I've spent years working with her, helping her navigate the world that sometimes feels too overwhelming for her. But there are still moments like this one, that make me feel like no matter how hard I try, I can't shield her from the cruelty of the world. It wasn't until I heard the school bus pull up that I started feeling uneasy. I had always been a little protective of Emma, especially when it came to situations where I knew she might face judgment. As I stood by the door, watching her excitedly rush to grab her backpack, I couldn't help but notice the way the bus driver was eyeing her. I had never seen him look that way before, distant, almost judgmental, but I brushed it off. Maybe I was just being paranoid. Maybe it was just the morning fog messing with my senses. I watched as Emma climbed aboard the bus, her excited little feet taking 2 steps at a time. Her grin was contagious, and for a brief moment, I felt that sense of peace that comes with knowing she's off to school, to learn and play. But that peace was short-lived. Not long after the bus pulled away, I received a call that would change everything. My phone buzzed in my pocket, pulling me away from my thoughts. It was the school, an unusual call at this hour. I quickly answered, my heart racing with a sudden sense of dread. Mr. Hayes, the voice on the other end said, this is Mrs. Riley, the school principal. We've had an incident. My blood ran cold. What happened? Is Emma okay? Well, it seems there was an issue with the bus ride today. Emma was asked to leave the bus, and she's now standing on the side of the road. I'm afraid we need you to come pick her up immediately. I was speechless for a moment, the world spinning around me. Asked to leave the bus? My heart pounded in my chest as 1,000 thoughts raced through my mind. What could have possibly happened? Emma had been on that bus hundreds of times before. She had always gotten along with the driver, always followed the rules. Why would they just kick her off? I didn't wait for another word. I grabbed my keys and bolted out the door, my mind a whirlwind of confusion and anger. As I rushed through the streets to the bus stop, I tried to calm myself down, but it was no use. Something had happened, and I hadn't know what. When I arrived, I saw her immediately. Emma was standing on the side of the road, looking lost and confused, her backpack hanging loosely over her shoulder. Her hair, usually neatly tied back, had come undone, and her face was streaked with tears. My heart shattered seeing her like this, so vulnerable, so alone. Emma? I called, running to her. She turned, her face lighting up when she saw me, but there was a sadness in her eyes that I had never seen before. I knelt down to her level, holding her close, brushing the tears from her cheeks. Sweetheart, what happened? Why did they kick you off the bus? Emma sniffled, her words coming out in a rush. I didn't do anything, Daddy. I didn't fit in. The lady said I couldn't stay. The lady? I asked, my stomach tightening. I already had a bad feeling about this. Do you mean the bus driver? No, Daddy. It wasn't the bus driver. It was the woman who was standing there. Emma's eyes flicked over to the side of the road, where a woman in her mid-40s stood, arms crossed, watching us with an icy stare. The woman's presence was as cold as her expression. I stood up, my hands balling into fists at my sides. I walked over to her, every step heavier than the last. I didn't know who she was, but I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't about to let her get away with hurting my daughter. Excuse me, I said, trying to keep my voice calm despite the anger bubbling up inside me. What's going on here? Why was my daughter kicked off the bus? The woman looked me up and down, her eyes narrowing as she sized me up. Your daughter's behavior was disruptive. She couldn't sit still. She was making too much noise. I told the driver she needed to leave. I felt my blood pressure rise, but I forced myself to stay composed. Disruptive? My daughter has autism. She might act a little differently than other kids, but that doesn't make her disruptive. The woman sneered. I don't know anything about that, and frankly, I don't care. She was causing a scene, and that's all that matters. My anger boiled over. You can't just kick her off the bus for being different. That's not how this works. You don't get to decide who belongs and who doesn't. The woman crossed her arms, still refusing to acknowledge the truth. I'm just following the rules. You can take it up with the bus company. But there was no taking it up with the bus company, not when the person in question was so clearly biased and unkind. I was done talking as I stood there, trying to calm my racing thoughts. It hit me, this wasn't just about Emma anymore. This was about standing up for her, about making sure no one else in this neighborhood would ever treat her like that again. This was bigger than a single incident. It was about justice. And what that woman didn't know was that she had no idea who she was messing with. The woman standing in front of me wasn't just anyone. Her name was Karen Myers, and she was the kind of person that everyone in the neighborhood knew, not because she was friendly or kind, but because she made sure everyone knew her. Karen was one of those people who believed that rules were more than guidelines. They were laws carved in stone, meant to be obeyed without question. She held a position on the HOA board, and let me tell you, she took that role far too seriously. To her, it wasn't just about keeping the neighborhood nice. It was about control, and she wielded that power like a weapon. I had run-ins with Karen before. Little things, mostly she didn't like the way I trimmed my bushes or the color of the exterior of my house. But I never paid much attention to her because I didn't see the point in getting into arguments over trivial stuff. I was busy with my work as a Navy SEAL, and when I was home, I just wanted to focus on my family, especially Emma. But Karen didn't understand that. She had this obsession with order, and to her, anything that was out of line needed to be corrected, no matter the cost. I first met Karen when we moved into the neighborhood a few years ago. I remember the moment clearly. It was a Saturday morning, and I was out in the yard getting the kids ready for the day. Karen walked up to me, her heels clicking against the pavement as she approached. Her smile was tight, almost forced, and she immediately started in on a lecture about the rules of the neighborhood. At first, I tried to be polite, nodding and listening, but the more she spoke, the more I realized that this wasn't just about rules. It was about her need to control everything around her. "You know, you're not supposed to park your truck in front of your house overnight," she said, with a tone that suggested I had committed a serious offense. I gave a light chuckle, trying to brush it off. "It's just for one night, Karen. I'll move it in the morning." But she wasn't having it. "No, we have rules for a reason, and it's important that everyone follows them. We don't want the neighborhood looking like a junkyard." I stared at her, trying to keep my cool. I was used to dealing with high-pressure situations, but for some reason, her tone rubbed me the wrong way. This wasn't just about rules anymore. This was about Karen asserting herself as the unofficial queen of the neighborhood. I remember looking her in the eye and saying, "Listen, Karen, I'm here for my family. I'm not trying to make trouble, but I'm also not going to let you dictate every little thing I do. If I need to park my truck for a night, I will, and I expect you to respect that." She huffed, clearly not used to being spoken to like that. "Well, don't say I didn't warn you." That encounter was just the beginning. Over the next few months, Karen seemed to find more and more things to criticize. From the placement of my trash cans to the color of the flowers in my front yard, nothing was ever good enough. She even tried to convince the HOA board to fine me for violating community standards, even though everything I did was within the rules. It was clear she had a personal agenda, and I was the target. But even with all of this, I tried to let it slide. I didn't want to escalate things. I didn't want to get into a battle with someone like Karen. I had more important things to focus on, like Emma. I was also aware that as a Navy SEAL, I had a reputation to uphold, and I didn't want to create unnecessary drama. But Karen wasn't one to let things go. She was relentless, and over time, her attacks became more personal. One evening, I found myself at the local grocery store when I ran into Karen. She was in the produce aisle, eyeing a bunch of bananas like it was a crime to pick the wrong ones. Of course, she saw me and decided to make small talk, which quickly turned into another lecture about neighborhood protocol. "You know, I've been hearing some things," she said, lowering her voice like she was about to divulge some secret. "Your daughter, Emma, has been causing a lot of disruption in the neighborhood. I saw her in the park the other day making noise. People are starting to talk." I froze. There it was, the first time I'd ever heard her speak about Emma directly. My protective instincts flared up, and I could feel my muscles tense. I knew exactly what she was doing. She was trying to make me feel ashamed, trying to paint Emma as a problem in our neighborhood. "I'm sure Emma was just having fun, Karen," I replied, trying to keep my voice calm. "She's a kid, and sometimes she gets excited." But Karen wasn't interested in hearing that. "Well, she can't keep disturbing the peace. Some of the neighbors are starting to complain. I think you should keep an eye on her." My blood boiled. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. "Karen, don't ever talk about my daughter like that again. She's just a kid, and I won't have you spreading rumors about her in this neighborhood." She smirked. "I'm just saying it might be time for you to handle it before it becomes a bigger problem." That moment was the beginning of everything. Karen's judgmental, condescending attitude towards Emma had been growing for months, and now it was clear. Emma was the target of her resentment. The very thing I had feared had finally come to pass. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about protecting my daughter from someone who had no business making her feel like she didn't belong. And that brings us back to the school bus incident. You see, Karen wasn't just some bystander. She was the one who called the shots. She was the reason Emma had been kicked off that bus. That morning, the bus driver, who had always been perfectly pleasant to us, had been following Karen's orders. Karen, with her obsessive need to control, had decided that Emma was causing too much of a scene on the bus. In reality, all Emma had done was try to fit in to enjoy the ride, but because she wasn't quiet enough or normal enough for Karen's taste, she decided it was time to take action. I couldn't believe it. I had always known that Karen had a skewed view of the world, but this was beyond anything I had ever expected. She had crossed the line, and she had no idea who she was dealing with. The moment I saw Karen standing there, watching me with that smug expression, something inside me snapped. It wasn't just the fact that she had kicked my daughter off the bus or that she had gone out of her way to make Emma feel unwanted. It was the principle of it all. Karen had crossed a line. She didn't just insult my daughter, she attacked the very core of what it means to protect your own family. Emma's tears were still fresh on her face as she clung to me, clearly shaken by the events. I could feel her tiny body trembling against mine as I held her tightly, trying to reassure her without saying a word. She needed me to be strong. She needed me to show her that I would never let anyone hurt her, no matter who they were. I turned to Karen, my voice calm but laced with a quiet fury. You did this. You're the reason my daughter is standing here in tears. Karen looked back at me with that same cold, unbothered expression. Your daughter was disrupting the peace, causing a scene on the bus. Someone had to take action. I took a step toward her, my feet almost making a sound against the pavement as I moved. I kept my voice steady, not wanting to raise it. But I could feel the anger building with every word. You don't get to decide who belongs. You don't get to decide who gets to be treated with respect and who doesn't. Emma is just a little girl. She doesn't deserve to be treated like this. She tilted her head slightly, as though I were just some nuisance she had to deal with. I'm just following the rules. The bus driver had no choice. Your daughter was disrupting the other children. I clenched my jaw, trying to control the surge of frustration that was threatening to explode. The sheer audacity of this woman, she had no idea what she was talking about. Emma's behavior wasn't disruptive. It was simply different, and Karen couldn't accept that. I'm not going to stand here and let you justify this, I said, my voice hardening. You think this is about rules? This is about treating people with decency, regardless of how they behave. Just because Emma doesn't fit into your narrow view of the world doesn't mean she deserves to be punished. Karen sneered, clearly not bothered by my words. Your daughter doesn't belong here. People like her just cause problems. You should be more concerned about that than about making excuses for her. I could feel the blood rush to my face. It was hard to keep my temper in check, but I had to. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing me lose control. I took a deep breath and stepped even closer until we were mere inches apart. I'm a Navy SEAL, I said, my voice calm but deadly serious. And I've seen things in my life that would make most people's heads spin. But nothing in this world compares to the rage I feel when I see someone like you bullying my daughter. Karen's eyes widened slightly. I could see the wheels turning in her mind as she processed my words. The smug expression faltered for a brief moment, but she quickly recovered. So what? You think you can intimidate me with your military status? I'm just doing what needs to be done. You have no idea who you're dealing with, I said, stepping back just enough to make sure she could hear the full weight of my words. You've made a huge mistake today, Karen. You don't just get to walk around treating people like they don't matter. Not on my watch. There was a long pause, the tension between us thick enough to cut with a knife. Karen's eyes flicked over to Emma, still standing next to me, her face flushed from crying. She tried to hide it, but I could see the discomfort in her gaze, the realization that she had caused someone pain. For the first time, Karen looked away. She tried to hide it, but the guilt was there, at least for a brief moment. But then she quickly regained her composure, as if she were suddenly aware of how out of her depth she was. I didn't back down, though. I wasn't about to let her off the hook. Not after everything she had done. You're not going to get away with this, I said, my voice low but firm. I'll make sure this never happens again. I'll take this to the school, the bus company, the HOA. Wherever I need to go to make sure you understand that your actions have consequences. She stood there, staring at me, her lips curling into a bitter smile. You think you can make a difference? You're just one person against the system. People like me don't lose. We're in control here. I wanted to laugh, but the thought of Emma's tear-streaked face kept me grounded. I didn't have to be the one in control. I didn't need to win a battle. What mattered was protecting my daughter, making sure no one could ever treat her this way again. Maybe you're in control of some things, Karen, I said, taking a step back, my hands still clenched into fists. But you don't control me, and you don't control Emma. You've made a big mistake today, and I'm not going to let it slide. Not this time. I turned to Emma, whose eyes were still wet from crying. She was quiet now, holding onto my side like she needed me more than ever. I reached down and gently wiped her tears away. It's okay, baby. You're safe now. You'll never have to worry about this again. I looked back at Karen one last time. She was standing there, her arms crossed over her chest, still trying to maintain some semblance of control. But I could see the uncertainty in her eyes now. She knew she had messed with the wrong person. I'm done here, I said, turning to walk away, pulling Emma gently with me. You'll be hearing from me soon. Don't forget that. As we walked away from the scene, I could feel my heart racing, but the fury was slowly fading. This wasn't over. It was far from over. But in that moment, as Emma walked beside me, holding onto my hand tightly, I knew I had done what I needed to do. I had stood up for her. I had made it clear that no one, not even someone like Karen, would ever make her feel less than she was. I would protect her no matter the cost. As I looked down at Emma, I couldn't help but feel a strange mix of pride and sadness. She was growing up in a world that didn't always accept her, that didn't always understand her. But I knew that as long as I was around, no one would ever make her feel like she didn't belong. We were going to fight this, together. After the confrontation with Karen, things only seemed to escalate. What I thought would be a quick resolution, an exchange of words that would end with a mutual understanding, quickly spiraled into a full-blown community spectacle. Karen's influence in the neighborhood ran deeper than I realized, and I had no idea just how far she was willing to go to defend her actions. The day after our confrontation, I received a call from the school principal, Mrs. Riley. She was apologetic at first, but it didn't take long for me to realize that she was more concerned about avoiding conflict than doing what was right. She told me she had spoken with the bus driver and Karen, but ultimately she was just following protocol. The bus driver didn't want to kick Emma off, but Karen insisted, Mrs. Riley explained. She said Emma's behavior was disruptive to the other kids. I could hear the hesitation in her voice, but I knew she was just trying to play it safe. I'll be taking this to the school board, I told her firmly. What happened was wrong, and I won't let it slide. Emma deserves to feel safe like every other child. She promised to look into it, but I didn't hold my breath. I knew how these things worked. People like Karen had a way of twisting the truth to fit their narrative, and it was clear the school was already leaning her way. I could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on me, but I couldn't stop now. I couldn't let Emma think for a second that this kind of behavior would go unchallenged. It wasn't just the school I had to worry about, though. Karen had started reaching out to the HOA board members, trying to spin the situation in her favor. Word spread fast in the neighborhood, and it wasn't long before I started hearing whispers from other residents. People were talking about the incident, some siding with Karen, others, like me, upset by what had happened. But Karen was doing everything in her power to control the narrative. I came home one afternoon to find a letter waiting for me. It was from the HOA, a formal warning about my disruptive behavior during the confrontation with Karen. They claimed I had caused a scene, intimidated her, and made threats. The letter was clear in its tone. If I didn't apologize, I would face sanctions from the HOA, possibly even fines or legal action. I stared at the letter for a long time, my hands shaking with a mixture of anger and disbelief. Karen had gone so far as to paint me as the villain in this situation. It wasn't enough that she had hurt Emma. Now, she was trying to ruin me, trying to make me look like the aggressor. I'd expected something like this to happen. People like Karen didn't just stop at one victory, they had to make sure they crushed their opponents completely. But I wasn't about to back down. I took a deep breath, reading the letter again, focusing on the words carefully. I wasn't going to let this happen. I would not let her smear my name. I knew I had to act quickly, but I also knew I had to play my cards right. That evening, I sat down with Emma, explaining what had happened. I could see the confusion and hurt still lingering in her eyes, even though she tried her best to hide it. I told her that what Karen did wasn't her fault, that it had nothing to do with how she acted on the bus. I reassured her that she was loved, that she mattered, and that I would always fight to make sure she was treated with respect. Daddy, why do people treat me different? Emma asked, her voice soft and uncertain. I felt my heart break all over again. This was the part no parent should ever have to explain. Some people don't understand differences, sweetie. They see things that are different and feel uncomfortable. But that doesn't make you any less special. You're perfect just the way you are. She smiled up at me, her innocence still intact, but I could see the doubt lingering in her eyes. I promised her that we would fight this together, that no one would ever make her feel like she didn't belong. But deep down, I was starting to feel the weight of everything. The neighborhood was divided. Some people saw me as the hero, standing up for my daughter, doing what was right. Others, however, sided with Karen. She had this way of convincing people that she was just doing her duty, that she was trying to protect the order of the neighborhood. They didn't see what I saw. They didn't see the cruelty in her actions, the judgment she passed on a little girl who simply didn't fit into her narrow view of the world. I found myself getting more frustrated with each passing day. It wasn't just Karen, it was the entire system that allowed her to get away with this. The HOA, the school, the neighborhood, it all seemed like a well-oiled machine that worked to protect people like her, people who could manipulate the rules to their advantage. I was starting to realize that this wasn't just about Emma's experience, it was about something much bigger, standing up to a system that didn't work for everyone. In the meantime, I had to make sure I didn't let my emotions get the best of me. I knew that if I wanted to win this battle, I had to be strategic. I started gathering evidence. I took photos of the letter from the HOA, made copies of my communication with the school, and even started speaking with other neighbors who had witnessed the incident. I wasn't just going to sit back and let Karen's lies spread unchecked. I was going to take this to the next level. But it wasn't just about the paperwork and the meetings. It was about Emma. Every time I looked at her, I remembered why I was fighting. It wasn't just for justice, it was for her. To make sure she knew that she had a voice, that she was worthy of respect, and that no one would ever make her feel small again. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that this wasn't going to be easy. Karen wasn't going to roll over. She had too much pride, too much power in this neighborhood. But I had something she didn't, truth on my side, and I wasn't about to let her win. A few days later, I received another letter, this time from the bus company. They were conducting an internal investigation into what had happened. It was a small victory, a sign that maybe, just maybe, my efforts were starting to pay off. But I knew this was just the beginning. The real battle was going to be in the community, in the school, and with Karen herself. I would need every ounce of strength. I had to see this through, but I wasn't afraid anymore. I had come this far, and I wasn't about to let anyone, especially someone like Karen, tear my family apart. It was time to take a stand. The days following the initial fallout with Karen felt like a blur. Each morning, I would wake up with the weight of the situation still hanging over me. Every glance at Emma, her shy smile, her quiet laugh, reminded me why this fight was so important. But the more I pushed back against Karen and the system that seemed to protect her, the more I realized that this battle wasn't just about her. It was about something deeper, something I wasn't prepared to confront. I kept fighting, going through the motions, contacting the school, gathering evidence, meeting with neighbors, but there was one thing I wasn't prepared for, a twist in the story that would change everything. One evening, after another long day of paperwork and meetings, I received an unexpected phone call. It was from Karen, the last person I ever thought would reach out to me, the one person I would have expected to bury her pride in a pit of denial, was now on the other end of the line. "Mr. Hayes." Karen's voice was hesitant, almost as if she were walking on eggshells. I think we need to talk." I froze, my grip tightening around the phone. After everything she had put me through, after the way she'd humiliated my daughter and tried to manipulate the community against me, this was the last thing I expected. "Talk? About what?" I've been thinking a lot about everything," she said, her voice cracking slightly. "About what happened with Emma. And, well, I want to apologize." The words hung in the air for a moment, surreal and impossible to believe. Karen was apologizing? Was this a trick? A way for her to regain control and twist things in her favor again? I didn't trust her, not for a second, but part of me, just a small part, wondered if maybe, just maybe, she had come to her senses. Or was it a trap? Apologize? I asked, my voice guarded. "After everything you've done? After you kicked my daughter off the bus? Now you want to apologize?" She sighed deeply. "I know this is hard for you to understand, but I want you to know that I didn't fully comprehend the damage I was causing. I've been reflecting on my actions, and I see now that I was wrong. Emma didn't deserve that. She's just a child, and I treated her as if she were some sort of problem. I'm sorry." The words sounded genuine, but I couldn't let my guard down. I had spent months dealing with Karen's manipulative, controlling behavior. Her apology felt hollow, like she was trying to fix something broken without fully grasping the extent of the harm she had caused. But still, I couldn't help but listen. Something about the tone in her voice made me stop, made me reconsider the situation. Could it be that she had truly seen the error of her ways? "Why now?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, but the suspicion in my mind was clear. "After everything that's happened, why are you reaching out now?" "I've been going through a lot myself," she replied, her voice softer now. "My daughter, she's got special needs too. I didn't want to admit it, but I've been watching how you fought for Emma, and I realized something. I've been projecting my own fears onto her, onto you. It's not easy being the parent of a child who doesn't fit into the world the way others do. But I understand now that what I did was wrong, and I want to make it right somehow." The words hit me like a ton of bricks. Karen had a daughter with special needs? I never would have guessed. I had always seen her as the type of person who couldn't possibly understand the struggles of a family like mine. But here she was, admitting something I never expected to hear. "I didn't know," I said, my voice softer now, unsure of how to respond. "I had no idea." "I know," she replied. "I've kept it hidden for a long time. But watching you stand up for Emma, watching you fight for her rights, for her dignity, made me realize that I was wrong. I should have been more understanding. I should have been a better person." For a moment, there was silence between us. I could feel the weight of her words settling over me, heavy with the complexity of the situation. I wasn't sure what to make of it. Was this some kind of revelation, or just another attempt to control the situation? "I want to make amends," she said, finally breaking the silence. "I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I'm asking you to hear me out. I want to help fix things between us for Emma's sake." I was torn. Part of me wanted to dismiss her, to tell her to go away and never speak to me again. But another part, something deep inside me, felt like this was a moment of truth. Could it be that she had genuinely changed? Or was she simply trying to get herself out of a mess she had created? "I'll consider it," I said after a long pause. "But don't expect this to be forgotten. You hurt my daughter, and you don't just get to undo that with a few words." "I understand," Karen replied quietly, "and I'm not asking for that. I just want a chance to prove that I can do better. For Emma. For all of us." I hung up the phone, my mind racing. I wasn't sure what had just happened. Karen had revealed a side of herself I never expected. And while part of me wanted to remain skeptical, another part felt a glimmer of hope. Could this really be the beginning of a new understanding between us? Or was it just another manipulative tactic? Over the next few days, I started noticing small changes in Karen's behavior. She stopped engaging in the petty arguments with me about the neighborhood, and I saw her interacting with other families in a more genuine, compassionate way. She seemed different, softer, more open. I even saw her approach another neighbor whose child had autism, striking up a conversation with a level of empathy that I hadn't thought her capable of. Still, I couldn't fully trust her. Not yet. I had to see if her words matched her actions. I had to see if she would continue to make amends, or if this was just a temporary phase. But then, something happened that made me rethink everything I had assumed about Karen. I was sitting in my living room one evening when I received a letter from the school. It was an apology letter, not just from the principal, but from the bus driver as well. They had reviewed the incident, and they had taken full responsibility for what had happened. They had also put new policies in place to ensure something like this would never happen again. The school even offered to personally apologize to Emma for the trauma she had experienced. The final paragraph of the letter stunned me. We have also spoken to Mrs. Myers about the incident. She has expressed deep regret and has agreed to personally apologize to your family. We hope this can begin the healing process. I couldn't believe it. Karen, the woman who had caused so much pain, had gone above and beyond to make things right. She had put her pride aside and taken steps to repair the damage she had done. It wasn't just an apology, it was a commitment to change. And for the first time, I believed that maybe Karen had genuinely learned from her mistakes. The twist I didn't see coming wasn't just her apology, it was the way she took responsibility for her actions, not just with words, but with real action. As I read the letter, I thought about how much had changed in such a short amount of time, and as much as I had resisted believing in her, a part of me felt proud of her. Proud of her for taking responsibility, for setting an example for her daughter, and for making things right. Maybe, just maybe, this was a turning point for both of us. The phone call with Karen, followed by the unexpected letter from the school, was a turning point. I had never expected this outcome. After months of tension, anger, and frustration, it seemed like everything was slowly beginning to fall into place. The bitter taste of injustice had started to fade, replaced by a sense of cautious optimism. Karen had done something I never thought she was capable of. She had taken responsibility. And though I was still wary, a part of me felt like this could lead to something bigger, change, real change. The following week, Emma and I attended a special meeting at the school where Karen was there to personally apologize. It was awkward at first, of course. The two of us sat in a small conference room, Emma sitting quietly next to me, while Karen stood by the door. She looked uncomfortable, but her eyes were sincere. The apology she had written was one thing, but this was a different moment altogether. This was her trying to make up for what she had done face to face. And in that room, with her standing in front of us, I saw a different side of her. Someone who was finally owning up to her mistakes. Mr. Hayes, Karen began, her voice calm but strained. I want to start by saying how deeply sorry I am for what happened with Emma. I never should have judged her. Never should have made her feel less than anyone else. I didn't understand what she was going through, and I was wrong. I understand now that my actions hurt her and hurt your family, and I want to make it right. I glanced at Emma, who was watching Karen with wide eyes. She didn't say anything, but the way she looked at her spoke volumes. It was a look of confusion, but also a glimmer of hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, this situation could be fixed. Karen turned toward Emma. Emma, she said, her voice softer now, I know I hurt you. And I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to make you feel bad. You're a wonderful child, and I was wrong to treat you the way I did. The sincerity in Karen's voice caught me off guard. I had heard her say these things on the phone, but hearing them in person directed at Emma was something else entirely. Karen wasn't just apologizing to me anymore. She was trying to right the wrongs she had done to my daughter. And for that, I felt a sense of gratitude, genuine gratitude. Emma didn't say anything for a few moments, but then, with a quiet voice, she responded, "It's okay." Her words were simple, but they held so much more weight than anyone could possibly understand. It was like she had decided, in that moment, that she could forgive Karen. She wasn't going to carry that burden of resentment with her. Emma was teaching me something important in that moment. Sometimes, forgiveness doesn't require grand gestures or long explanations. Sometimes, it's just about letting go of the hurt. Karen smiled softly, visibly relieved. "Thank you, Emma. That means more than you know." The rest of the meeting went smoothly. We discussed how the school was going to implement new policies to prevent something like this from happening again. The bus company had also sent a representative, and they assured us that they would retrain drivers to handle these situations with more empathy and understanding. The entire atmosphere in that room had shifted from tense and uncertain to collaborative and understanding. It wasn't perfect, of course. The damage had been done. But for the first time, I felt like things were heading in the right direction. Karen wasn't just offering empty words. She was actively working to make sure that the same mistake wouldn't be repeated. It was clear she had learned from the situation, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe a little easier. As we left the meeting, I walked out of the school with Emma by my side, holding her hand tightly. We were both quiet, lost in our thoughts, but I could feel a sense of peace settling in. We had fought for this, and we had won. Not just for Emma, but for every child out there who had ever felt misunderstood, judged, or left behind. This wasn't just about one small incident. It was about standing up for what's right, even when the odds seem impossible. And that's when I realized something important. It wasn't just about Karen. It was about all of us as a community learning to see beyond our differences, to treat one another with kindness and respect, no matter the circumstances. I could have walked away from this situation just as easily as I could have let it tear us apart. But I chose to stand my ground, not for my own pride, but for Emma. And by doing so, I helped to change the course of our neighborhood just a little bit for the better. The call to action. As I reflect on everything that happened, I realize something powerful. Standing up for those who can't always stand up for themselves is one of the most important things we can do in this world. Whether it's a child with special needs, a neighbor who's been unfairly targeted, or anyone who has been silenced or misunderstood, we all have a responsibility to fight for justice. If you're watching this right now, I want you to take a moment and think about your own life. Think about the people around you, your family, your friends, your neighbors. Are there people who are being judged, dismissed, or treated unfairly? Are there moments where you could stand up and make a difference, even when it's uncomfortable or difficult? We can't wait for someone else to do it. We can't wait for the world to change on its own. We have to be the change we want to see. I want to challenge you today. Don't sit on the sidelines. Don't be passive when you see injustice. Stand up for what's right, even when it seems like the odds are against you. Because you never know how much of an impact your actions can have. And if you've ever been in a situation where you've been hurt, where you felt judged or misunderstood, I want you to know that you are not alone. You are worthy of respect, kindness, and love, just as you are. Never let anyone make you feel otherwise. And remember, there's always room for growth, for understanding, and for change, even in the most unlikely places. So, if this story has resonated with you, if it's made you think about the world in a different way, I want you to share it. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Share it with your community. Let's start a conversation about standing up for others, about creating a world where kindness and empathy lead the way. If you're ready to be part of that change, to take action in your own life, hit that like button, drop a comment below about your own experiences, and don't forget to subscribe. This isn't just my story. It's a story about all of us. It's a reminder that no matter how small or big the act may seem, we can all make a difference. Together, we can make the world a better place for everyone. Thank you for watching, and remember, family comes first. Stand up for what's right, and always, always be kind. If this story has inspired you, made you think, or touched your heart, I want you to take action. Don't just watch, do something. Think about the people in your life, your community, and the world around you. Are there moments when someone is being misunderstood, judged, or left out? Are there times when you could stand up and make a difference, even when it feels uncomfortable or difficult? I challenge you to be the voice for those who don't have one. Stand up for what's right, even if it means going against the grain. It's not always easy, but it's always worth it. Your actions matter. Whether it's helping a neighbor, supporting someone who's been mistreated, or simply showing kindness to someone who needs it. If this story resonates with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Start a conversation about standing up for others, about creating a world where kindness, empathy, and respect lead the way. Let's make a difference together. If you're ready to take that step, hit that like button, drop a comment about your own experiences, and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. I'm so glad you're here, and together we can keep spreading this message of hope and change. Remember, family comes first. Stand up for what's right, and always choose kindness. Thanks for watching. Let's make the world better, one action at a time.